Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Perth East Council, this 6th day of February. I'd like to call our meeting to order. If everyone could please bow their head for a moment of reflection. Thank you. Is there anything anyone wishes to add to the agenda, take away? If not, we have a motion that the agenda as prepared for February 6, 2024 meeting of Council of the Township of Perth East be approved as received. Moved by Jerry, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. If you have community interest, you can disclose that now or as the meeting goes along. We have 21 items on our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like pulled or they have questions about? Andrew?
Thank you, Mary. It's 5.1.21.
Okay, anyone else? Hugh?
5.1.15 Sarnia about the carbon tax, especially
We'll pull it in and you can explain it after. Anything else? Okay, if not, then we have a motion. We have a motion that says items 5.1.1 to 5.1 to 21 is set out in the consent agenda for the February 6, 2024 regular meeting of council be received for information, and with the exceptions of 5.115 and 5.121, which shall be introduced separately. The minutes of Perth East Public Library Board meeting January 9, 2024 be received for information, and minutes of January 9, 2024 regular council meeting be adopted. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Amanda, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll go back to 5.15, Hugh.
yeah, the C234 is stuck in Parliament, and that was the one that we used to reduce the carbon tax on the fuel used by farmers to dry their grain and corn and stuff like that. So if we could send Sarnia a letter that we support them and send it to our MPP and MP.
Okay, so you're moving that?
Yep.
And do we have a seconder for that? Amanda? Any more comments or questions? All in favor of that? Carried. Okay, and 5.21, Andrew?
Thank you, Mary. So this one here looks like on the surface, and if you look at the details, it's a Perth South gig, but it seems that it's going to drag in the north side, the north side of the highway significantly. I'm looking at wording that says water wastewater study of the village. I think there's like a couple hundred houses proposed. So this is going to affect us, although it is a Perth South item. So I'm not sure if it's appropriate for us to put an opinion together if anybody has one. I just thought I'd bring it up because it's definitely going to be significant to our residents on the north side of the highway.
So what we could do is send it back to staff and ask that they be part of the EA and planning applications to be involved in it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Then we can keep a real-time kind of eyeball on what's going on so we can effectively communicate it to the residents if asked.
Amanda?
Just a question and a comment. I believe there's an information session taking place soon. Do we have anyone from staff that will be joining and listening in at that information session? And I know that there's been some discussions with our joint services agreement with fire. So didn't know if Bill had any involvement or interaction on the EA. I think that's probably beyond the scope of the EA, but just was curious on the scope. But my understanding is that it's only on the Perth South side. It doesn't impact Perth East, except it would maybe impact fire. services.
Right, the water and sewer is self-contained in the subdivision. It will not affect the residents. The open house that they are having, I don't even know who's putting it on. It's not the municipality, and it's not the developer. So I'm not sure who is putting it on, but somebody else is. And I don't know if staff are attending. I plan on attending that evening to see what's said. I don't know if anyone else is or not, but it's open to everyone, so. Andrew?
Thank you. We have some county staff here. Do you know if they, if it's appropriate to ask, did they study the whole settlement area or just a proposed subdivision? For the water, wastewater component, I'm reading on the letter from Perth South. That would be a question I would definitely want to know.
Jeff, do you want to answer that?
Yes, through the mayor. So the Class EA is intending to study different design proposals for either public servicing for the entire area, or if it's just going to be for the private subdivision development. So they're trying to determine through that process and through the open house and the feedback that's going to be received from agencies and the public, which of those two methods of servicing the subdivision is the most beneficial to that community.
So is that the open house that's on the Friday night, or who's putting that? That's not put on by the municipality, is that correct? Or who is?
So for the meeting that's being scheduled, it's for the Class EA, and that portion of the meeting would be the representatives of the developer, and also the Perth South is also a co-proponent of that. We're also going to be talking about the official plan amendment at that meeting and the zoning.
But that's at their council meeting.
That's at the council
meeting.
meeting.
That's not the Friday night.
No, that's a different meeting. Yeah.
Yes.
Just a question for clarification. So if I heard you correctly, so the EA process, you're saying will do one of two things, looking at the scope of just within that division, like that subdivision, but you're also suggesting that it could look at a broader beyond that. And so if that's the case, why, like, how does Perth East get involved if it could potentially impact the other side of like our municipality and township?
Through the mayor. So you would likely want to be involved in the process, and I would suggest maybe reaching out to your consulting engineer to discuss what type of system you'd like to see in Stephenville, because it's going to impact development on both sides of that highway. It's not just potentially for the south side, unless it becomes just a privately held servicing solution. So the different options are out there. It's either going to be privately owned and operated just for the subdivision, or it could have some sort of a municipal component. And that's why Perth South is involved in that process, because if they determine that the best design is putting in public services outside of the plan of subdivision, then that's going to be an extension of those services, and it's going to open up additional development potential for that community.
So just so I'm clear, so it could be by the proponent, right? The system, or owned by the municipality, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, through the mayor. It could be just for the private development through the developer. It might be owned entirely for them and just service their plan of subdivision. Or the other option is that it services part of the municipality of Stephenville, or the settlement area in Stephenville. And if that is the case, then the township would be involved in putting in those services. The Class EA is intended to determine which of the two solutions is the preferred option.
So just so I'm clear, sorry, I just want to make sure, like, crystal clear. So I totally get the two options, proponent or potentially the municipality, but we're talking about the south side. So you're saying, like, does that just stay on the south side, or would it impact the Perth East side? That's the clear thing in terms of the scope of the EA, of whether it's looking at the entire settlement area or not, and how how would the application, because the application is the municipality that's put forward the Class EA or the proponent?
Through the mayor, it is a joint application for the Class EA, the proponent and the municipality are both working together on the application. It's being driven by the development from the proponent. So it's being driven by the subdivision development. Once they review that Class EA and they review the different options, they could expand those services out to the highway and impact Perth East lands.
But if we're not we're not one of the proponents in the EA process, so why would the Perth East side be part of the EA process? Do you see what I mean? Like, so they're a joint EA process, but we aren't part of that EA process. So I just want to make sure I'm like understanding that.
Yeah, so my understanding of it, and I don't want to get into the realm of trying to offer professional advice on the engineering components of it, but they will be dealing with servicing on their side of the road. But the fact that the servicing is on their side of the road impacts Perth East. So if they decided that they were doing municipal servicing up and down Huron Road, that servicing, you could tie into that for development on the north side of the property, on the north side of the roadway. So it might not necessarily be you installing or Perth East having that servicing installed at your cost, but you may be tying into that servicing at some time in the future if the servicing is developed for the entire community.
But it wouldn't be impacting the Perth East side unless we chose to do that. And I think that's the clear thing, is that it becomes an option should they decide to put those services on the south side.
Yeah, through the mayor, that's my understanding. It becomes an option. It's not that they're putting services on the Perth East side of that road at this point in time.
Thank you.
It might impact it down the road. It might give more options for future development.
That's my understanding too. Shut me off. That's my understanding too. When they do it, they had to do it for the whole village, but they've never ever approached us to see if we're even interested. But it's there in, say, 20 years, 10 years, they decide to do a development, the option is there that we could hook into it. So, okay, Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, sorry, we're in the hot seat. It doesn't say in the paperwork we have here, how big is this proposal? Like, how many units are we talking about? Just if you know offhand, sorry, I hate to ask in the spur of the moment, just, it's not really clear.
Mayor, if you just give me a moment, I'll pull up the plan and I'll be able to tell you the numbers. I know if I try to go from memory, I won't get it correct, so. Which includes single attached townhouse dwellings and low-rise apartments. 92 of those lots would be single attached dwellings, 2 blocks for low-rise apartments, and 4 townhouse blocks.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob?
Just for history, this isn't the first time this parcel of land has been proposed for development, and the last time we're onto this was probably a smaller parcel, but wasn't feasible for the developer in the township of Perth South. And I don't think there was any conversations really with the township of Perth East, although there was an expectation that perhaps the Perth East side of the town would hook in at some point, but those residents were opposed to it, so it never flew at all. And I don't think Perth South really had much interest in the costs at that time to service a small portion of the village. But that was how many years ago now? Maybe 10.
Maybe 10, yeah. Okay, if we have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the notice from Lizette Scott, Clerk, Township of Perth South, notice of public meeting concerning proposed zoning bylaw amendment application, 123 Station Road, for information, and that council direct staff to be involved in environmental assessment, EA, and planning applications. Moved by Andrew, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have no public presentations, no other presentations, no delegations, no public meetings, and no public hearings. So we're going to move to our first planning application, and it's a sever application by Matthew Orchard, submitted by Matthew Orchard on behalf of Eltrude Ports. So Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So the consent application is B4823, submitted by Eltrude Ports for the lands municipally known as 4316 Road 130. The provincial policy statement states that prime agricultural areas shall be protected for the long-term use for agricultural and for the creation of lots that shall comply with the MDS provisions. The subject lands consisted of 2 farm parcels that had merged on title when the properties were transferred into the same ownership. The applicant is intending through this application to sever the property into 2 parcels, which are approximately 40 hectares in size. Each parcel will exceed the size requirements of the zoning bylaw and are intended to remain in agricultural production. The subject lands are designated agricultural according to the official plan. The official plan recognizes that farm parcels are to be large enough to facilitate flexible and efficient farm operations over the long term, and they're intended to carry out a wide range of activities. The splitting up of farm units into smaller farm parcels is discouraged. So planning staff are satisfied that the application meets the requirements for the new agricultural lot creation. The severance of the subject lands will result in 2 farm parcels that will be similar in size to the original farm parcels. The continued use of the retained and severed parcels is for crop farming, and the size of each lot is appropriate for the type of farming use that's being proposed. The size of the parcels are large enough to accommodate the operations, with the flexibility of expanding and intensifying farming operations in the future. The proposed lot lines have been slightly altered from the original parcel fabric to accommodate for the existing drain and vegetation on the property, which will allow for more efficient farming parcels. And the applicant has submitted an MDS calculation that shows how the severance of the subject lands will allow for a buildable area that meets the MDS 1 provisions. The lands are zoned agricultural A. The subject lands are being used for crop farming, and the agricultural lots will conform with the zoning requirements for the lot area and lot frontage requirements in the zoning bylaw. The proposed lot to be severed will have a lot area of approximately 41 hectares and a frontage of approximately 416 meters. The proposed lot to be retained would have a lot area of approximately 42 hectares and a lot frontage of 395 meters. For agency comments, Hydro One and Blue Water Recycling have responded to the circulation. They have no concerns with the application. The Upper Thames River Conservation Authority responded after the planning report had been completed. They have expressed a concern with the future development of the retained and the severed lands. Their opinion is that flood-free access cannot be achieved for the 250-year storm. So they do not support the creation of lots which would be deemed to be inaccessible, or where a developable area outside of the hazard lands do not exist. They're asking that the application is to be refused. They did note if the application is approved, they've recommended that a condition be included that the applicant is required to undertake a flood study to the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority's satisfaction, which demonstrates that dry access is available and that there is a developable area outside of the flood hazard in both parcels. So planning staff are suggesting the inclusion of a condition that provides an option of either placing a holding provision on the lands, and that holding provision would prohibit any new buildings or structures on the land until a flood study has been completed. So I believe that's been circulated and that condition has been included in your package tonight. The applicant has advised us that they have no intention to build on the properties and that they are looking to, or they'd be willing to complete that zoning bylaw holding provision and that zoning bylaw application as part of this process. Public notice was provided to the neighboring property owners on January 15th. No comments or concerns have been received from the public. The application proposes to sever an agricultural lot that was previously merged on title when 2 lots were put into identical ownership. Previous lot configuration represented the original farm unit, and as mentioned, at the request of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, the applicant submitted a lot configuration that separates the severed and retained lands along the existing drain. So planning staff are supportive of the proposed severance, subject to the revised recommended conditions of consent approval being fulfilled. I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions of council? Hugh?
Yeah, you talk about the size, and it says that they'll both be over 40 hectares, and that exceeds the size requirements for Perth East zoning bylaw. You wouldn't happen to know what our requirement is, would you?
Yes, through the mayor's 33 hectares.
Sorry?
33,
In English, that's 81.5 acres.
roughly that, yes.
Okay. So also further on there, and on page 84, it says about you would have to have 81.5 acres before you could put a house on the property.
Yes, you need to meet the minimum zoning bylaw requirements in order to put a dwelling on that property in association in accordance with the zoning bylaw provisions.
So if you had a 50 acre, if you want to call it lot, you couldn't put a house on it.
If it's less than 33 hectares in size, you cannot put a house on it. And if you're doing the conversion, I'm not doing it in my head.
Okay, no, there's something wrong with that. If you've got the land, you should be able to put a house on it, but that's my personal opinion.
We've had people put houses on 50-acre parcels. That's why I'm confused. I've heard that before, what he was saying, but I know where there's a 50-acre parcel and they put a house on it without a zoning amendment. Yes.
Yeah, there are provisions for undersized parcels of land to put dwellings on those parcels. But for the full use of the property, 33 hectares is required for your farming use. And that's when you'd normally be allowed to have that dwelling and secondary dwellings also.
Amanda?
Just a question, is that requirement something that is outlined in our official plan, or is that a mandated thing from like OMAF or the province? Like where is that figure coming from? And and then the other question is, like, for parcels that had a house, would they be like on a 50-acre parcel, would they be grandfathered in if they were to build new? Like, say if there's like an existing dwelling and they like took it down and built something new, would that be grandfathered in? I know these are hypotheticals. I'm just curious. We don't have the answers. We can just send an email afterwards, but I was just curious on that too.
Yeah, so through the mayor, the requirement comes through the zoning bylaw provisions in the agricultural zone. And if you were to remove a dwelling down to grade, typically you wouldn't be allowed to replace that dwelling. Now, I understand that our process in Perth East is that if it's on the same footprint, that they would allow them to rebuild within a certain period of time. And I'm sure Wes could speak to that further, as he's the one that would administer that zoning bylaw provision.
Yes, that's accurate. Through your mayor, Meggets.
Okay, any other questions? I have one about the Upper Thames concerns here. Is it already zoned floodplain now? Property that they're concerned with?
Zoning on the property, it shows it as floodplain on our mapping system, so it is within that area, but I'll do a quick check here. I think it is split zoned.
Well, I'm just wondering if they're using their new mapping system or what mapping system they're using to talk about this floodplain.
Yeah, the floodplain shows up on our mapping system. So it's the mapping information that they have provided to the county, and it's on our GIS system. So it shows the floodplain where it's located, or the regulated limits of the land.
So
And
is
it's
that the
within that.
mapping the county's approved, or that's the mapping they want us to approve, or?
That's the mapping that's in existence that we're using. Yes, it's approved.
And this 250, I thought it was 100-year regulatory storm, not 250 years.
My understanding is that from what I've heard and what I've been involved in, most engineers are dealing with the 250-year storm, same with the conservation authorities. So they're trying to study based on that provision.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so we do have a motion. I'll try to condense some of it because we have about 9-10 items. So Council of the Township of Perth East received the report dated February 6, 2024, prepared by the planner entitled Consent to Sever Application File B48-23, submitted by Matthew Orchard, Monteith Ritzma Phillips Professional Corporation on behalf of Eldetrod Ports for the lands described as lots 16 and 17, concession 4, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, 4316 Road 130 for information, and that council advise the Land Division Committee or its delegated authority that the Township of Perth East supports the application file B48-23 subject to the following conditions. And these are Perth East conditions. 1, that all taxes have been paid in full. 2, all financial requirements have been met. 3, confirmation that the required cash in lieu of parkland dedication fee has been paid for each new severed lot. 4, confirmation that the apportionment schedule for municipal drains in the area are reviewed and updated. 5, confirmation that the severed and retained lots have each been assigned separate municipal addresses and signs. 6, confirmation that the road access to the severed and retained parcels are to their satisfaction. And 7, confirmation be received that either an amendment to the Township of Perth East implementing zoning bylaws has been adopted that places a holding provision on the portion of the severed lots that within the floodplain to prohibit new building and structures until a flood study is completed to the satisfaction of the UTRCA, or that a flood study has been undertaken to the satisfaction of the UTRCA. The flood study must demonstrate that dry access at or above the 250-year regulatory storm to the severed lands is achievable, and that there is a developable area outside of flood hazard. Perth County conditions: 1, solicitor that the certificate of the official will be scanned and attached to the electronic register of the transfer, and 2, the Land Division Committee be provided with a description that is consistent with the application and equal to that required for registration of the deed/transfer. Alternatively, the committee may be provided with an order pursuant to Section 150 of the Land Titles Act, RSO 1990, or Section 80 of the Land Registry Act, RSO 1990, issued by the Land Registrar, exempting the transfer from the requirement that a reference plan be deposited. If it has been determined that the subject property is a whole lot on an original township plan of survey and an exemption order cannot be provided by the Land Registry, satisfactory proof of the same shall be provided by a solicitor with confirmation stating the reason why an exemption order cannot be provided. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Hugh, second by Amanda. Any more questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, and the next is consent to sever by 2497505 Ontario Inc. Jeff, floor is yours.
And also just for information of council, 15 hectares in size, which is 37 acres, is the minimum requirement for a dwelling on an undersized lot. So I did pull that quickly just before we started this presentation. Okay, so consent application B4823 was submitted by 2497505 Ontario Incorporated for the lands municipally known as 275 line 34, which is located in Shakespeare. The provincial policy statement states that settlement areas shall be the focus of growth and development, and land use patterns within those settlement areas shall be based on densities, a mix of uses which efficiently use the land and resources and are appropriate for and efficiently use the infrastructure and public services which are planned and available. The subject property is within the service urban area in the official plan and is considered a settlement area. The lands are designated as serviced urban area residential in the official plan. That urban area intends to provide for a broad range of land uses, including residential, institutional, recreational, and utility uses. The residential policies recognize that with the provision of municipal sanitary services, new residential development is anticipated to be on smaller lots and at higher densities than what was there in the past. The Shakespeare urban area is partially serviced with full municipal sanitary services and partial municipal water. It is intended that the partially serviced area will eventually become fully serviced. So the official plan recognizes that the preferred servicing option for new development is a connection to municipal water and sewer services, and that all new development is to be connected to the municipal sanitary sewer system. A new development shall be directed to areas that allow for the extensions of the existing water, sanitary, and storm systems in an economic and practical manner. Where only where municipal water is unavailable or feasible can small-scale development through the consent process be permitted on private wells, subject to the approval of the municipality. The subject lands are currently zoned residential medium density R2 zone. The zone permits for single detached, semi, duplex, triplex, converted dwelling containing not more than 3 dwelling units. The proposed lot to be severed will have a lot area of approximately 1,021 square meters, a lot frontage of 35 meters, and the proposed lot to be retained will have a lot area of 1,241 square meters with a lot frontage of 35 meters. The retained lands are occupied with a 2-story, 4-unit townhouse dwelling, and the severed lands are occupied with 3 accessory sheds and playground equipment. Blue Water Recycling has responded to the circulation to say that they have no concerns, and the MTO has no objection to the application. So public notice was given on January 22nd in accordance with the Planning Act. The neighbor immediately to the west of the subject lands has expressed a concern with garbage and upkeep of the property. That correspondence was received just yesterday. The neighbor is concerned that another quadruplex dwelling is going to be developed at some point in time and is requesting that the fence is placed along the entire property boundary. If the property is rezoned to allow for 4 dwelling units, a planting strip would be required as part of the provisions in the R3 zone. Subject lands are located within a settlement area, a service settlement area, and the residential land uses are permitted in the official plan. There are existing storm and sanitary services available both to the retained and severed lands, and the retained parcel is serviced by municipal water supply. So planning staff are including condition number 7 to require that the nearby water services are extended to the proposed lands to be severed. The lot severance would result in a buildable lot that will meet the zoning bylaw requirements for a triplex dwelling in a location that represents a logical expansion of the existing services. The lands to be retained are occupied by an existing 4-unit townhouse dwelling, and the lands to be severed are intended to be developed with a triplex dwelling. The townhouse dwelling unit is not a permitted use in the residential R2 zone, and if a consent application is approved, the lot area and the lot depth of the retained parcel will change, and as a result, a rezoning of the retained lands is necessary in order for it to conform to the Perth East zoning bylaw. Condition number 8 has been included in the staff recommendation to ensure that the parcel is brought into conformity with the zoning bylaw. Planning staff are supportive of the proposed severance, subject to the recommended conditions of consent being approved.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Questions of the report? Hugh?
Jeff, is the triplex, so 3 houses, that would be the maximum you could put on there?
Through the mayor, yes. Under the existing zoning, the maximum number of units is 3, so triplex dwelling is the highest density use you'd be permitted without having to do a rezoning of the property. And the applicant has suggested that they would like to develop the property with a triplex.
Okay, other questions? You talked about the fence. That would be dealt through site plan, is that correct? Just so the people know who sent that in.
Yeah, so if they decided to change the zone to allow for a 4-unit dwelling, then it would be required through the zoning and through, you wouldn't have a site plan process in place, but through the building permit process to put a planting strip along the property line. Right now, there's no requirement to do that. So from a planning perspective, the zone doesn't require it. And if they put a triplex in, the garbage or the upkeep of the property should be dealt with through property standards and through bylaw control, not through a rezoning or not through a condition that would require them to put in a fence. If you wanted to request that that condition be added, we could ask, or we could include that as a condition of the consent, and then it would be implemented before they could finalize the consent approval.
And do we do that now, or?
You would do that, you would add a condition if you wanted to see a fence or a planting strip along that property boundary, you could add that as a condition tonight. If you don't add it as a condition, the applicant could add that at their choice, but they're not legally required to do that because it's not in the zone, it's not required through the zoning, and it's not being requested through the list of conditions that we've included with the recommendation tonight.
Okay, Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess Planner Ben and I had a little chance to talk about some of the items on here today. I think they're mostly resolved, some wording that relates to the official plan, but the planning staff may not have known that this area is always due to people running the lights and trying to skip the stoplights on the main street, that there's a lot of traffic concerns about pedestrian and bicycle traffic, especially children. So I don't want to aggravate that situation. Maybe just keep that in mind for possibly parking. And I know the 1.5 car space thing is pretty exciting. I still don't know what half a car is, but maybe no on-street parking might be something. I don't know what the possibilities are, but if we could just keep that in mind to not aggravate a situation that's already contentious, please.
Okay, anyone else? If not, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report dated February 6, 2024, prepared by the planner, entitled Consent to Sever Application, File B52-23, submitted by 2497505 Ontario Inc., for land described as Lot 8, Lot 17, Part Lot 9, Part Lot 16, Plan 331, Part 2, 44R-443, Southeast Tope Ward, Township of Perth East, 2175, line 34, for information, and that Council advise the Land Division Committee or its delegated authority that the Township of Perth East supports application file B52-23, subject to the following conditions. And these first conditions are the conditions of Perth East. Confirmation be received that all taxes have been paid in full. Number 2, confirmation that all financial requirements have been met. Number 3, confirmation that the required cash in lieu of parkland dedication fee has been paid for each new severed lot. Number 4, confirmation that the apportionment schedule for municipal drains in the area be reviewed and updated. Number 5, confirmation that the severed and retained lots have been assigned separate municipal addresses and signs. Number 6, confirmation that the road access to the severed and retained parcels are to their satisfaction. Number 7, that the owner developer enter into development agreement with the Township of Perth East, and that the terms of the agreement be satisfactory to the Township of Perth East, including but not limited to A, provision for the connection to potable water services, sanitary and storm sewage systems. B, financial securities and requirements for connection to municipal water and sanitary, and C, a requirement for entrances. Also, that the Township of Perth East, confirmation that an amendment to the Township of Perth East implementing zoning bylaw has been adopted to zone the retained lot to permit the existing 4-unit townhouse dwelling. And number 2, confirmation be received that the Township of Perth East, the existing sheds and playground equipment on the subject property has been removed to conform with the zoning bylaw. Perth County conditions. Number 1, confirmation be received from a solicitor that the certificate of the official will be scanned and attached to the electronic registrar of the transfer. And number 2, that the Land Division Committee be provided with a description that is consistent with the application and equal to that required for registration of a deed/transfer or other conveyance of interest in land under the provision of the registry land or land titles. Alternatively, the committee be provided with an order pursuant to Section 150 of the Land Titles Act, RSO 1990, or Section 80 of the Land Registry Act, RSO 1990, issued by Land Registrar, exempting the transfer from the requirement that a reference plan be deposited if it has been determined that the subject property is a whole lot of the original township plan of survey, and the exemption order cannot be provided by a land registrar. Satisfactory proof of the same shall be provided by a solicitor with confirmation stating the reason why an exemption order cannot be provided. It says here a 4-unit. Is it 4 units or 3 units? 4? It is 4?
Right now, the existing dwelling is has a 4-unit townhouse.
Sorry, existing, yes.
The existing is 4, and
Okay,
what's being
yeah.
proposed on the additional lot's 3.
Yes, I was thinking of the new one. Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder for all that. Moved by Bob, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're going to move to the draft new Perth County official plan. And Susanna's with us tonight to do that, so welcome, Susanna.
Thank you very much.
And the floor is yours.
I just have to get my other glasses. Okay, good evening, Council. Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here tonight to review the draft Perth County official plan. And I have a number of slides to review with you. I believe that you have a copy of the official plan and the maps, and perhaps you've had a chance to review that. Can you hear me okay? Is that all right? Okay, if we go to the next slide, please. All right, so the Perth County official plan is prepared under the legislative authority of the Ontario Planning Act. This is the legislation that all planning decisions are made under. And the Planning Act itself, it requires that the province develop a provincial policy statement, which provides a policy direction for local official plans. And so the current provincial policy statement is the 2020 PPS, and that informs the existing Perth County official plan, and then the Milverton official plan, the Listowel official plan, and the Mitchell official plan. So that's the suite of policies that are available at the local level now. And if we go to the next slide, please. The new official plan is proposed to replace the current official plan, and then the Milverton, Listowel, and Mitchell official plans will all be repealed. So there will be one official plan for the entire county, and that's the document that Council has received for review. The same legislative framework. So the Planning Act is the provincial legislation that provides county council with the authority to develop an official plan. So if we go to the next slide, there were a number of background studies that were prepared in order to inform different sections of the official plan. And there are 3, in fact, and they're illustrated on the slide. So there is the Natural Heritage System Study prepared by Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. And that was a study which involved delineating the wetlands, woodlands, and natural heritage features, natural environment features across the Perth County landscape through air photo analysis. And that mapping was used to model the natural environment system across Perth County. And then that mapping was used to develop the designations and the natural environment designations in the official plan. And I'll speak to that further when we get to the natural environment policies. And then WSP was the planning consultant that was engaged by Perth County in order to write the Perth County official plan. This project has been underway for some time. They were engaged in 2018, and at that time they held a number of open houses and a public meeting required through the Planning Act in order to receive comments from the public to inform the development of the official plan. So the policy directions report summarized the work of their public consultation exercises, as well as the direction from the provincial policy statement, other provincial policy documents, and the current planning documents at the county level. And then finally, the comprehensive review was prepared by Watson and Associates, and there were actually two versions of the comprehensive review. The first one was finalized in April 2020, just at the time of the pandemic. And then following receipt of that document, County Council and the general observation in the community was that perhaps population levels were increasing faster than projected by the work of Watson and Associates. And so they updated that. And that document then was the second version of the comprehensive review was received by County Council in November of 2023. And this provides population and employment forecasts for the county, as well as forecasts with regards to the land required for residential and employment uses for a 25-year planning horizon, which is the planning period that is required by the provincial policy statement. So I'm going to speak to this document further as well. And these are critical pieces, components that were used to inform the relevant sections of the official plan. So if we go to the next slide, please. No, sorry, we have a question. Do you want to take questions now, or?
Would it be okay if I asked a question while it's
go
fresh?
ahead. Yep.
So just appreciate the overview on the studies and the reports. Just want to get clarity on the Watson study. You mentioned there was two versions, and the reason for the second report was that during the pandemic, it was sort of determined that perhaps population was increasing faster than anticipated. What was the main data or factor that suggested as such? Like who made that determination? Like I'm just sort of like the context. I was just curious if you had the history of that.
Yeah, perhaps the mayor can you answer this question? I wasn't involved in the comprehensive review at this time.
It just was felt that the data, like some of the numbers that we had, the populations were growing at that limit already then, and so the numbers were out of date before the report even came out. So County Council felt that the numbers needed, they used the census of, I believe, 2012 or 2016. We felt the census was too old, the numbers that they were using, and so we asked them to go back and update everything.
And it was a good decision. Like the projections from the 2023 are much larger than the 2020 comprehensive review. It's very interesting. So this is the comprehensive review then makes forecasts with regards to the land required by service settlement areas. And the service settlement areas are on the left-hand side of the screen. So Atwood, Listowel, Milverton, Shakespeare, and Mitchell are the service settlement areas. The service settlement areas are the areas where the communities where there is municipal water and municipal sewage. And the provincial policy statement directs development to service settlement areas. So this slide summarizes in the second column from the left, it says existing vacant residential land supply in the current official plan. So that is the existing vacant residential designations for those respective settlement areas. Then the third column from the left summarizes the surplus and or deficit for the respective settlement areas as provided in the 2023 comprehensive review. And then finally, the far right is the vacant neighborhood designation. So the new official plan uses a neighborhood designation rather than a residential designation. And I'll speak to that further. And so this is the area by service settlement areas of vacant residential or vacant neighborhood designated land, both in metric and in acres, imperial. So on to the next slide. Similar information, this is the employment land supply. So again, Atwood, Listowel, Milverton, Shakespeare, Mitchell, and the comprehensive review also included James Street south of St. Mary's and the township of Perth South, which is an urban fringe designation in the vacant employment land supply. So then the second column from the left is the existing industrial land supply in the current official plan. So you can see for Milverton, there's 73 hectares of vacant employment land or industrial land supply. That has been impacted by the PERCON lands, and there is no employment land in Shakespeare. So then continuing on to the next column to the right, the comprehensive review states that there is a surplus of employment land in Milverton, and then a deficit of 5 hectares in Shakespeare. And then in the total available employment land designation in Milverton is 102, I'm switching back and forth, sorry, 102 acres in Milverton and 7.8 acres in Shakespeare. So that is the vacant land supply. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. So this is now moving to section 2 of the draft policies in the official plan. And what I wanted to point out is that there are a number of monitoring policies in section 2, which are the growth management and settlement area categories. And those are a direction to every 3 to 5 years, monitor the population and employment projections. So the comprehensive review provides a 30-year planning horizon. That's what the population and employment projections are. So the policies direct the county to check in every 3 to 5 years to see, is the forecast continue, or is growth continuing as forecasted? And then that can be used to reflect on the land consumption density and intensification. So with the existing vacant land supply, is this adequate? Or is it too much? Can it be tweaked? And then finally, that local municipalities prepare master servicing plans is also a policy in section 2. So we continue to the next slide. Section 2 also has residential density targets. So 52% of new residential density is directed that it shall be low density, 31% medium density, 17% high density. These density targets come from the comprehensive review. So these are the density levels of new residential development that was used by Watson and Associates in order to determine the required land allocation. It compares to the existing residential stock across the county, which is 86% low density. So most of the current development residential uses across the county, this isn't surprising, but if we drive around through the communities, we see it's mostly single detached dwellings. And the direction to increase the density of new residential development, so moving to townhouses and quadruplexes and also apartment buildings, is in order to both plan for the anticipated growth that the comprehensive review is projecting, at the same time be cognizant of the valuable agricultural land base in Perth County, and that if the new development can be denser than it has been historically, then that will allow for the anticipated population while not consuming agricultural land at such as fast a rate. Yes?
Is that area or is that units, that percentage?
It refers to units, so 52% of new units.
Of new units, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, so then the next policies, 232, are the intensification and infilling policies. This also comes from the comprehensive review. So when Watson and Associates did their forecast with regards to the land required, they included an intensification target. This is directed by the provincial policy statement, and the intensification target is 10%. For new residential units. So this would be, if we take the existing settlement area footprint for the service settlement areas, that 10% of new residential developments will be within that built-up area. Likewise, there is an intensification target for employment intensifications, and that is 5%. And likewise, there is a monitoring policy that this be checked on every 3 to 5 years. Should be a conversation with developers as their development community, as they're planning their projects. Is it possible to be increasing or intensifying the existing settlement area within the existing settlement area boundaries? Okay, if we go to the next slide. So here are the settlement area categories as defined in the new Perth County Official Plan. There are serviced urban areas, there are villages, there are hamlets, there are rural clusters, and there are urban fringe. So I'm going to walk through these so you can have a sense of what the different settlement area categories are. So we go to the next slide. There are 2 serviced urban areas in Perth East. This is the map for Milverton. And you can see there are many different colors on this map. Each different color is a designation and has a corresponding policy in the official plan. And I'll go through that in a bit more detail later on in the presentation. So if we go to the next slide, this is the Schedule B mapping for Shakespeare. So this shows the land use designations for Shakespeare, which is considered a serviced settlement area. We go to the next slide. This is village mapping for Sebringville. So the slide lists all the villages in the county. So that pink is referred to as a village designation. And the village designation permits development, residential development, light industrial development, commercial development, or institutional development through a zoning bylaw amendment. So any of those types of development can proceed, provided that the zoning is in place for it.
Real quick, so just specifically, we're looking at Sebringville and some of the smaller ones. What's their planning? Is it HRV, Hamlet, a rural village, or is it R2, or what's it proposed to be?
Smaller than villages?
Yes.
Yeah, if we go to the next slide, I think we'll
sorry.
catch that. It's a great question. Sets the deck up nicely. So here are hamlets. So these are smaller than villages. And while there is mapping, a Schedule B mapping for all of the villages, like the Sebringville map that I just showed you, the Hamlet map hamlets are incorporated into the Schedule B map for the Perth local municipalities. So this is the North Perth map. The large gray area is Listowel, and south of that is Atwood, and that purple arrow is pointing to a purple area on the map, on the Schedule B map, and that is a hamlet designation. So the hamlet designations work in a similar fashion to the village designation. Development can proceed through so long as the zoning is in place for residential, institutional, light industrial, which wouldn't be as uncommon as in a hamlet designation as a village designation. We go to the next slide. So there are also rural clusters across the county. In the current official plan, this is an infill designation. So these are crossroads. I'm not going to be able to think of a rural cluster in. I'm sorry. Thank you. And the rural cluster designation essentially recognizes existing crossroads and the uses there. And if we go to the next slide, this is the final settlement area category in the new official plan, and this is the urban fringe designations. The urban fringe designations are adjacent to existing service settlement areas. So where there was an urban fringe designation north and south of Milverton, and they have been incorporated into the Milverton settlement area designations, so that those are, I think both north and south, they're corridor commercial designations now. But where there are urban fringe designations adjacent to Stratford and St. Mary's, the urban fringe designation remains. And the urban fringe policies work in a very similar fashion to the Hamlet and village policies. So they permit development by rezoning, and a range of uses are permitted. And development is permitted on private services in these areas. If we go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a new policy in the Perth County official plan, and there were two locations, one in Perth South Sebringville and one in Mitchell, where the local municipalities had identified lands where they were preferring growth to go. So those lands were identified as candidate lands on an appendix mapping, so this is not a designation. But in Mitchell, for example, the municipality had done some work with infrastructure planning for stormwater in particular, but also sewage and water. And they wanted that area to be identified in the new official plan so that the development community would be apprised that the municipality was intending to grow the industrial area in this direction. So there is a policy, a candidate lands policy that speaks to this land, and then there is an appendix mapping that shows that area. If the municipality or if a developer had used the industrial land that has been allocated for a 25-year planning horizon, then an official plan amendment would be required to bring this area into the industrial park, to change the land from agricultural to industrial. The next slide, please. So this is now moving from the settlement area categories as outlined in section 2 of the official plan to the land use policies in section 3 of the official plan. And I'm going to walk through these at a high level so you have a sense of the tone of the various policies. So if we go to the next slide, so this is Mitchell, and I used Mitchell, appreciating that I'm at Perth East Council, because there was such a lovely air photo that just shows the land uses, and you can see the land uses as shown in the designation. So it just seemed like a nice example of how the official plan mapping is related to the land uses in the community. And I did speak to economic development and told them how great this photo was, and they told me that they are working on getting photos for all the other communities. So we'll be able to offer comparable presentations in the future. So the designations in the service settlement areas are in that white box, the text on the left. There is a neighborhood designation, that is the yellow area, light yellow area, which incorporates a lot of Mitchell. And the neighborhood designation, as I mentioned, replaces the residential designation in the existing official plans. So the residential designation at this point permits low, medium, high density residential uses. And then there are specific designations for commercial and institutional. The new neighborhood designation as proposed in the draft official plan permits institutional and small local commercial uses, which means that that policy allows for more flexibility than the existing residential designation. The urban mixed use is the pink area in the downtown of Mitchell, and you can see in the air photo the downtown that they are, the mapping relates to the existing uses, and the mixed use, urban mixed use replaces the, I think it's a downtown commercial designation, and recognizes that residential uses are permitted in the downtown area. The corridor commercial designation is the purple. which is highway commercial, and also high-density residential is permitted in the corridor commercial designations. Employment is the pink in the industrial park in the southeast area. Institutional is the orange, which you can see at the top. That's where the schools are in Mitchell, and the nursing home. And then the open space is the green area, which are the parklands. We go to the next slide. So that would you just back one. So that's just to give you, to allow you to see the mapping without it having the text on top of it. The other designation I can point out is the floodplain designation, as it runs through, the river runs through Mitchell. And you can just see the floodplain designation on the left. And in that area, the floodplain designation supports a floodplain zone and recognizes that this is a natural hazard area and restricts development from being in that area. Okay, so on to the next slide. So this is moving past the settlement area policies to the agricultural policies. This, the illustration on the left, the map of the entire county, is provided for illustration purposes. This map actually is not in the draft official plan. It was prepared in order to show the significance of the agricultural resource in the county. So everything that is white is an agricultural designation. And the provincial policy statement and the current official plan offer a high level of protection to agricultural land for agricultural purposes, in recognizing the significance of that land base and supporting the agricultural economy. So the permitted uses within the agricultural designation are farms, agricultural uses. So those are the land itself for cropping purposes, building livestock barns and manure storages, silos and anything related to grain storages, and any other related farm buildings and sheds. And then residential uses are considered accessory to a farm use. So residential use is permitted if there is a farm that's established. And now an additional residential unit is also permitted on an agricultural parcel. So that's first, agricultural uses. The second use that's permitted in an agricultural designation are agricultural related uses. So an agricultural related use is considered an agricultural commercial use, like a farm equipment dealership, or an agricultural industrial use, like a livestock shipping yard, or assembly yard, or a grain drying business, or fertilizer storage. Those are all considered agricultural, commercial, and industrial uses, and those are permitted in an agricultural designation. And there is a change to the agricultural related uses policies, in that it states in the new official plan that a residence is permitted as an accessory use to an ag commercial or industrial use. That's new. There have been a couple of amendments in the last couple of years to permit houses accessory to farm businesses. So that is something that, we're flagging and bringing to the public consultation for further discussion, to see if that's the direction that the community and municipalities would like to see in the agricultural policies. And then finally, on-farm diversified uses. So the on-farm diversified uses policies replace the secondary farm occupation policies in the current official plan. And this is a change that happened, I think, around about 2005 in the provincial policy statement. So the current Perth County official plan was written in 1999. So it is catching up to the 2020 PPS. So earlier than the 2020 PPS, I think it was 2005, the provincial policy statement changed to recognize on-farm diversified uses. And this was a pretty big change. It might have been 2014 even. Like, it was a pretty big change to broaden the types of businesses that could be considered secondary to farms. So the current official plan permits value-added agricultural manufacturing businesses it restricts the area of a secondary farm occupation to be 375 square meters. And it also limits the number of employees, off-farm employees, to a maximum of 2 off-farm employees. The policies for the on-farm diversified use in the draft official plan allow home occupations, home industries, and also agritourism uses. So it's a broader range of permitted uses. It also provides direction for the local zoning bylaws to specify the maximum number of employees. So while the official plan is in county council's jurisdiction, as the planning authority is county council, the local zoning bylaw is in Perth East Council's jurisdiction. So that the policy sets up the zoning bylaw to be a discussion for Perth East Council as to how many employees could be permitted. And then where can I just, or would you like? So then the other change is as directed by the OMAFRA guidelines for on-farm diversified uses is that the maximum area for an on-farm diversified use is 2% of the area of the farm or 1 hectare, whichever is greater.
Amanda?
So just a question, so the on-farm diversified uses, like for example, that winery that came to us, that would be captured in that. Would something like I'm seeing it in other parts of the province, like where people will have like a farm stay, like you'll stay in like a little mini cabin or a converted grain bin that they turn into like a camping thing. Like, does that capture in that, or how does that like work? Just curious, because like we don't have so much of it this area, but I'm seeing it in other parts of the province. It seems to be really popular.
Yeah, that's a good example.
So it would.
Yeah. I mean, as informed by the local zoning bylaw, like there's some work to define what is considered an agritourism use, the local zoning bylaws, but it's a good example. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there was those types of uses. I think there have been a couple of applications in Huron County for overnight accommodation for people who are cycling the G2G trail, for example. So yeah, I think that would be an example of an on-farm diversified use. One of the policy requirements is that it's secondary to a farm occupation. So first there is a farm on the property, and then there can be an on-farm diversified use. So the intention is to provide the farmers, the operators of that agricultural operation as secondary income source. So a property couldn't be considered for that type of use unless there is an agricultural use first established. Yeah. That's consistent with a secondary farm occupation. First a farm, then a secondary business. But the on-farm diversified uses make the possible uses broader and provide more broader and can use more land. Like another example is a corn maze. Like a corn maze would be an agricultural tourism use, and it could be larger than 375 square meters, for example, which is the limit in the current official plan. So I'm continuing on with the agricultural policies now. The new official plan provides policies for new recreation and institutional uses. Essentially what it does is it recognizes existing recreational and institutional uses in the countryside, and then it provides policies for considering new recreational uses. A new recreational use would need an official plan amendment, and it's a fairly significant, so this would be for a golf course or a campground. That is not related to agriculture, like it's a standalone golf course. That would need an official plan amendment to change it to a recreational designation. They would need to demonstrate that there wasn't another location that was protective of the agricultural land base, and also minimum distance separation. There might be other study required, but those are the types of things that a new recreational use would need to demonstrate. And then institutional uses are directed to settlement areas. There is one opportunity for new institutional uses, and this is consistent with the current official plan, is that where institutional uses are proposed by communities that rely on horse-drawn transportation, they can be considered in an agricultural designation. There are policies for considering existing undersized lots of record and directing that residential uses can be permitted on properties 4 hectares and smaller. That was related to an earlier conversation that you had tonight. And finally, there is strong direction throughout the agricultural policy to direct non-farm development to settlement areas, that everything is not related to agriculture is directed to settlement areas in order to protect the agricultural land base. We go to the next slide. The mineral aggregate policies are, I don't believe there are many changes. The existing licensed pits and quarries are designated mineral aggregate in the Schedule B mapping. And the map that's on the slide here is an appendix in the draft official plan, which provides the mapping from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry of where the primary and secondary aggregate deposits are in the county. This is provided for information purposes. Any new aggregate operation requires both an aggregate license from the Ministry of Natural Resources as well as an official plan amendment. In most cases, we would anticipate this would be changing the designation from an agricultural designation to a mineral aggregate designation. Go to the next slide. So this is the natural environment policies. And the mapping on the right, that's the Schedule B mapping for Perth East in the official plan. And there are 2 different colors of green. The lighter green is a natural environment designation, and the darker green is a natural environment provincially significant wetland designation. And you'll recognize the Ellis Swamp has a natural environment provincially significant wetland designation on it. So I mentioned earlier, one of the background studies was the Natural Heritage System study prepared by Upper Thames. And the Natural Heritage System study, as I mentioned, delineated, the Conservation Authority staff delineated all the natural heritage features, natural environment features through air photo interpretation. That was then prepared a model, and that model created mapping of the natural environment designations across the county. Then County Council provided direction for a consultation process for the natural environment mapping. So anyone who, where there was a change of an acre or more in the natural environment designation on their property within their agricultural and rural areas, or 1% or more within an urban area, received a letter in the mail. And there were about 2,700 letters mailed in October 2022. Those people were apprised of the draft mapping for the natural environment mapping, and they had a year to contact, October 2022 to October 2023. There was a window of time where they could contact the planning department, ask for a site visit, ask any questions about the natural environment designation on their property. So we had a planner on staff, Stephanie Van, who has been at Perth East Council at least virtually before. She was the one who did the legwork. So boots on the ground, she responded to the calls. She did site visits on 118 properties, and where there was any natural environment designation proposed and the natural environment feature was not on the property, that was simply removed. So the intention was to correct the mapping so that the mapping accurately reflects the natural environment features on the landscape. The other feedback that was received through that consultation process was concerns with regards to the meadows and thickets mapping, and that was from the Natural Heritage System study. So the meadows and thickets were identified in the Conservation Authority's report because they could be considered significant wildlife habitat. However, it's not specifically referred to, these features are not specifically referred to in the PPS. Through the discussion with the steering committee that was helping us with the official plan, more than helping us, taking significant leadership with informing the mapping and the policies, We removed the meadows and thickets from the natural environment designations. So as well as the 118 properties that received site visits, more than 500 properties have no meadow and thicket designations. All those designations have been removed. So it was a fairly comprehensive exercise, and we wanted to do this. This was under the direction of the previous manager, Sally McMullen. The intention was to do this prior to having County Council receive the document, so all of those mapping changes could be incorporated into the document before this public consultation process that we're about to launch into. The other question that comes up, or that Stephanie received when she was doing the public consultation, was with regards to the environmental impact study requirement. So, and the question was, is this new? So if somebody is proposing a new livestock operation, new barn, for example, or say a shed, an implement shed on a farm where there is an agricultural zone, they come to the building department to get their building permit. That, if it's a permitted use in the agricultural zone, they proceed to get a building permit. There is no requirement for an environmental impact study if the area where the barn is proposed or the shed is proposed is zoned agricultural. Where an environmental impact study is required is if a new dwelling or a building is proposed in a natural environment designation. And this requirement for an environmental impact study is within the current official plan policies. All right, so there may be more questions about the natural environment, but that gives you an overview of the work that's been done to date. And I appreciate that there has been a lot of discussion about this section of the document. We go to the next slide. So this is moving past section 3. That was a very fast overview of all the policies in section 3, which align with the designation mapping. So now these are county-wide policies which apply broadly to the entire county and are not linked to any specific designation. So I'm going to touch on the section 4.2, the housing, and section 4.5, natural hazards, as those are the areas where there has been the most discussion with regards to the draft document. So if we go to the next slide, this table 4.1 is in the official plan, and this is work that was prepared by Watson and Associates, same group that did the comprehensive review. How it was prepared for the HAF grants, the Housing Fund applications. And what this does is it provides the housing affordability forecast to 2033 by income level. So you can see on the far left under household income, it goes from a household income of less than 20,000, and then each line increases to the next income bracket. So in the area that is outlined with a dotted yellow line on the far right, you can see the number of units that the land economists, Watson Associates, have projected will be required for each respective income level. And they have broken it out to be both rental dwellings and properties that would be owned. So for households less than 20,000 or who make less than $20,000 per year, the next column, the second from the left, housing ownership, what would you say, income level bracket can afford a home that costs less than $60,000, and they can afford rent of $500. And that group requires over the next 10 years, 90 rental dwellings and 10 ownership dwellings. So when we look at this information, then it continues. So for example, let's look at 80,000 to 100,000, that income bracket can afford a home of 245,000 to 310,000. And they can, so if they're purchasing it, if they're renting, they can afford 2,000 to 2,500 a month. And there's a need for 100 of those units for rental and 80 for ownership over the next 10-year period. So this table is included in the official plan, and it seems that this will be helpful to the discussion in the community about, what type of dwellings are required. And then we can see that over this 10-year planning period, there is a total need for 3,200 new housing units. When looking at this table, we can see that homes for low and moderate income households, it will be difficult for the development community to meet this need. So if we go to the next slide, this is the housing continuum that's in the same report that was prepared by Watson and Associates. So on the far right, we have market housing. That's the housing that we typically think of. That's the housing that is available like through real estate listings and through the rental market. And then on the left-hand side are publicly funded and not-for-profit housing. So the observation is that the housing required by low and moderate income households might not be possible, will not be possible for this to be satisfied through the local developers. And perhaps this housing is going to fall to nonprofit organizations or government funded housing programs. So if we advance to the next slide. So with that overview, there are two sets of policies in the housing section. So affordable market housing addresses the developer-driven projects. That's section 4241. And then there's a different set of policies for non-market affordable housing. That's on the left. And so those types of housing, that type of housing includes many different models. So emergency housing, for example, emergency shelter, which I don't believe there's any in Perth County at this time, but that would be an example of that type of housing, or transitional housing, so housing that's available for people who are leaving abusive situations, or supportive housing, housing that's available with supports for people who are responding to mental health and addiction issues, or people who are elderly and need additional care. So if we go to the next slide. The first slide starts with affordable market housing. So this is housing that is built by local developers. So these policies refer to the Housing and Homelessness Plan for Stratford, Perth, and St. Mary's. It also establishes a target of 20% of the new residential development within service settlement areas will be affordable. And then it also acknowledges that purpose-built rental units are encouraged as affordable market housing for low and moderate income households, as rental housing would be more accessible, as people wouldn't need to get a down payment together. So if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so now this is the non-market affordable housing. So this would be nonprofit or government sectors. So it acknowledges that municipally owned land perhaps could assist with these types of projects, and that collaboration between government and not-for-profit sectors will assist in meeting these goals. And there is also a policy that states that local zoning bylaws will permit housing options for rooming houses, retirement residents, residential care facilities, group homes, and other long-term housing forms in every settlement area zone where residential uses are permitted. And finally, acknowledges that there may be additional incentives to support the need for the housing for low and moderate income households in the community. So we go to the next slide. The other policies that are in the housing section are for additional residential units, and we have been working with these policies for some time now, and there have been further changes to the Planning Act that allow as of right to additional residential units and on any residential property within a service settlement area. That's through the Planning Act. So the official plan is drafted to echo that Planning Act permission. And then in villages, hamlets, and the urban fringe designation, the unserviced areas, these types of units are permitted through zoning bylaw amendment, because in some cases, the lot might be so small that putting private septic services on those lots might risk the groundwater table in that area. So the zoning bylaw amendment allows for the review of whether or not that is a concern. If we go to the next slide, additional residential units are also permitted on agricultural parcels, accessory to a residential unit use where the residence is permitted in the agricultural zone. The same requirements as with a village and hamlet, and then also minimum distance separation requirements from any neighboring livestock operation. And there is also a policy that says that an additional dwelling unit should be built within the building cluster on the property, on the farm. If we go to the next slide. So this is moving out of the housing now to 4.5. This is the last section I'll review. There are two different approaches to the natural hazard or the floodplain policies. One is for within the serviced urban areas or all settlement areas, actually hamlets and villages as well. There is a floodplain designation. So that map on the left is listable. The blue is the floodplain designation, which is similar to what you saw in Mitchell. And that would inform as floodplain zoning in the listable community. And then on the right, outside of the serviced urban areas, there is an appendix map. These are not designations. And this map on the right shows the 4 Conservation Authority watersheds. So Perth East is within the Grand River watershed as well as the Upper Thames River watershed and a little bit of the, well, more than a little bit of Maitland Valley watershed. And then the squiggly lines of the different colors show the respective Conservation Authority regulated areas. So again, these are not designations. What the policies say is that if development is proposed within the Conservation Authority regulated lands, that the Conservation Authority should be consulted. We go to the next slide. I think that's the end of the review of the policies. So here is the high-level review of the public consultation process. So December 21st, County Council received the draft document, had a good discussion about it. That is available as a YouTube video on the County Council website if you're interested in listening to the conversation. There was a lot of good conversation about residential density and intensification in particular. And at that time, County Council provided direction to proceed with the public consultation. In January 17th, there's a requirement through the Planning Act that the province be circulated on the document and that they have it 90 days before the notice of public meeting be circulated. So that was sent to the province on January 17th. The official plan has been posted on the new official plan website on the Perth County website. It's also been delivered to the municipal offices and the libraries for public viewing. There's one copy at each of those buildings so people can go and look at it at those various locations. We had a good meeting with the official plan stakeholder group, which are members of the public and the broader community, and reviewed the public consultation structure proposal, and they had many good comments, which we have incorporated. We have opened a FAQ on the new official plan website for the general policies. There's also an FAQ for the natural environment policies on the website, which is continually reviewed and revised and updated as we're receiving questions. So that allows any member of the public to go and see what types of discussion is happening, and maybe questions that they have had have already been responded to. If not, we'll regularly update that so we have information about the questions that we're receiving. The document is being circulated to the First Nations communities. And this is the 4th presentation to the local councils. So I was at North Perth, West Perth. I was actually at Perth South this morning. If we go to the next slide, there are 4 public open houses proposed. The first is tomorrow in West Perth, Thursday in Listowel, next Monday in St. Paul's, and next Thursday in Milverton. Each open house is from 4:30 to 8:30, so people can drop in anytime during that window, and there will be a presentation from the WSP consultant at 5:30. There is an online option tomorrow, so people can email the department and we'll send them a link so they can join virtually. But all the open houses, there will be maps and review of the policies, policy boards, and copies of the official plan, and there'll be at least 4 staff there to answer questions. So after the open houses, the planning staff will be reviewing the public comments received. We'll be circulating the notice of public meetings. There's a legislative requirement for 20 days for that notice. So that has to be sent after the MMAH has had the document for 90 days. So that's how we get to April. And May will be the public meeting at County Council. And then when the issues have been addressed through the public consultation, received through the public consultation to County Council's satisfaction, County Council could proceed to adopt the official plan, at which point it's forwarded to the province for their review and anticipated approval. So that concludes the review.
Okay, questions, Amanda?
Just 2 questions. The stakeholder focus group, is this the same folks from 2018? And would it be possible at some point to recirculate the names of the folks that were as part of the focus group? Like some were individuals and I think some were like organizations or like, you know, Perth Federation of Agriculture. So just curious on that. And then the other thing is I noticed that West Perth has a virtual option. Is there a reason why one township is offering that and not the others?
That was the planning department. Like we just thought, oh, some people will want to attend virtually, so we just picked one randomly. It wasn't a lot of thought. Like anyone can go to any of the meetings.
But like, isn't like West Perth specifically more going to be focused on West Perth?
No, I mean,
just so like if, for example, like if us counselors wanted to promote and encourage folks to participate and they could only say do the virtual option, like I'm just trying to get some guidance, like why was West Perth selected and not all of them? Like if we pick just one at random, like what's the, like in case there's questions that I get questions from people, or if I want to direct people to say, hey, if you go to any of the sessions, they're going to cover the same topics. But if like you go to say, you're only available to go to say like the North Perth section, is it going to be more slated towards the North Perth elements? Is more so what I'm just trying to get, because I don't want people coming back and saying, you offered this at West Perth and was more accessible and you didn't offer it for the other townships. So I'm just so I have an understanding.
West Perth is being offered in their municipal office, which they can
provide that, the technology.
The other 3 are not in the municipal offices. They're all North Perth in their arena, Perth South is in their community center, and Perth East is in our perk. And it's a little harder maybe to provide the online.
So we can just say that if in the event that somebody questions it.
I think that's the reason.
That's the reason. Okay, no, that's good. I just want to make sure I'm equipped with the right information.
Your first question then was that answer. What was your first question?
The first question was just the there were sort of 2 points, was whether the stakeholder focus group was the same folks from 2018 that have been through the process since the beginning. Have there been new members added? And if it would be possible to circulate the names of the focus group, like who was part of the focus group following the meeting. Don't want to put her on the spot, like just for interest.
There was also a steering committee, and the steering committee was made up of all the mayors and the warden that were part of it as well. And then the focus group, I believe they met with you, and then they got to see some of the documentation before it became out to the council members.
Yeah, I'm more so interested in the focus group, like because I just remember so long ago now, just like there was, when we had the meeting in Milverton, there was some people like personally that volunteered to be part of it, and then there was also like organizations. So I just wanted to see the breakdown of like ratio. Like I wanted to see if there's anyone that I recognized, like for example, from my ward that was part of the focus group. So it's just more so for interest, like it's nothing I need to know now, but just if it could be shared following the meeting at some point.
Yeah, we can send it to the clerk, the list, the membership.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, Jerry?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. I know you've done a lot of work on this file, so as Jeff, as well as the other planners that have come and gone. So my question is in regards to the candidate lands. I just want clarification. You've listed Sebringville and Mitchell and nothing in Milverton. But again, are those candidate lands, I think I read it right, lands that are projected beyond the 25 years? So anything between now and 25 is not a candidate land? Like, I'm just thinking Milverton, for instance, there's a number of potential subdivisions, some that were on the books, now they're off the books, but just some clarification on the candidate lands, Susanna, thanks.
Yeah, it's a great question. Would you be able to go back to the candidate land mapping? Like it was way up at the beginning. So this was an idea that emerged. There we go. That's it. This was an idea that emerged through the discussions so the comprehensive review identified the land requirements by service settlement areas. So in some cases, through the discussion with the steering committee and the CAOs for the local municipalities, the land that was under discussion was greater than the 25-year planning horizon. So this idea of candidate lands was born from that discussion, that perhaps if the municipalities had lands where they were thinking, oh, this would be a good next development site, it could be identified not as a designation, but as a candidate lands. Then through that conversation, like that, so that evolved over, I don't know, a couple of weeks, maybe 2 months. And then after that, which was good work, like those were good conversations. After that, it evolved even further because like the question was, what is the purpose of the candidate lands mapping? Like if there was a candidate lands identified for Milverton, so it's not a designation, however, it's shown up as a candidate lands and all of the lands. So this is like 25 years down, like into the future. And now a developer, or even sooner, like maybe development happens in Milverton faster than the comprehensive review anticipates. So maybe in 15 years, all of the land that is currently identified for development in Milverton has been built. And now there is the candidate lands shown. And there is a developer who is interested in building somewhere else. The question that I had was, how does the planner at the time interpret the candidate lands? Like, is this how does it inform? Like, it's not a designation. So over the another couple of months, we went back and checked in with the CAOs again, and in all cases except for Sebringville and Mitchell, the decision was, let's remove the candidate lands, because like those decisions can be made by future decision makers. We don't need that level of forward thinking, except for Sebringville and Mitchell, because in Mitchell there has been a lot of infrastructure planning for the Mitchell Industrial Park. So that area was identified because it's part of the stormwater management plan that's already been prepared. And in Sebringville, Perth South, that parcel is adjacent to the Station Road subdivision that was being discussed earlier. So Perth South wanted to show that, okay, if we are putting this money into a new municipal services, we want to acknowledge at this time that this is the area that we anticipate development going further. So in both of those cases, it seemed to make sense, you know, because there was planning around infrastructure, that this would be identified in an appendix map. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
There was this unfolded, I don't know, over 4 to 6 months, like.
Okay, other questions? Hugh?
On 232 intensification and infilling areas, it says create complete communities, reduce travel distance to work and errands, reduce private automobiles, active modes of transportation are encouraged. I assume that's your feet and a bicycle. So is this the 15-minute city agenda?
Is it a, sorry, do we have 232 up? Let me just look at the policy you're referring to. I'm sorry, Counselor. You have 477 up, right? But the question is with regards to 232? Is that what you said?
Page 120 of our, it's 232 anyway, it's the very beginning, an intensification and infilling areas.
Intensification and infilling. In that section, the county, in.
It's page 19 of your official plan.
We're right at the beginning, intensification and infill development contribute to the creation of complete communities. Is that what you're referring to? By utilizing existing services and infrastructure efficiently, reducing travel distance for work and errands, and supporting the efficient use of land. I mean, this, the direction behind this policy is around protecting agricultural land and maximizing the use of infrastructure budgets. So if intensification can occur within service settlement areas and new water lines and water pipes are not required to be extended, that perhaps that would be more efficient, more protective of agricultural land. More efficient with regards to the use of infrastructure, more protective with regards to agricultural land. Does that answer the question?
Yep. And on 371, the natural environment, it's page 73 in ours. I'm not sure what that one is in. Just a second. It
371?
talks of, natural environment objectives and stuff like that. And it talks, and by the way, council also took out valley lands. That was to be taken out of the official plan too.
Okay.
And you talk about linkage. So if you have, say, a bush and you have a municipal drain, if the bush touches the municipal drain, is that considered linkage?
If the bush touches the municipal drain, is that considered a linkage? I think linkage might be defined, is it? Just a second. Is it defined? That's the section where it's referred to, but I don't think it's defined in the. Just a second.
In 371 on page 72, it talks about promoting, on F, promoting opportunities for linkage. So if you have linkage, is that going to change your designation? Like, if
It won't
there's
change your designation, like the relevant policy, let me just get it, let's find it for you, will be the, are you looking at 3757, linkage and enhancement areas?
I was looking at page 72, but no, it's
Okay.
fine. You're on 70, would you? 70.
Okay, linkage and enhancement areas. Okay, so this, the linkages, the reference to linkages comes directly from the provincial policy statement. And this is in the 2020 PPS, it refers to natural heritage systems. So we would have to look at the mapping specifically to see if there was, a linkage was mapped, was a natural environment designation. In some cases, they won't be mapped. So I was referring earlier to like an environmental impact study is required at the time that development is proposed within a natural environment designation. So if there is a farm with both an agricultural zone and a natural environment zone on it, and a new building is proposed in the agricultural zone, an environmental impact study is not required. But if there is, I'm looking to the building official, could you, like, is that consistent with your understanding?
Sorry.
Okay. If there is an agricultural zone and a new farm building is proposed in the agricultural zone, would an environmental impact study be required in the agricultural zone?
No.
No. So
If the ag zone is beside the natural heritage zone, how close can you get to that natural heritage zone before you have to do an environmental study?
so long as you're in the agricultural zone, no study.
But there was a farmer in Northeast Oak that did.
Okay, well, you would have to look at that specific
He
example.
wasn't in no environmental area at all. He was in an open field.
Was a planning application required?
Yep.
So if there is a planning, like it's the planning application that triggers the environmental impact study. So if there is a woodlot in a settlement area and a plan of subdivision is proposed, and the plan of subdivision somehow divides the woodlot or proposes to divide a woodlot, then an environmental impact study is required. And that if there was a drain or some sort of linkage there, then that could be, maybe, would be incorporated into the terms of reference for the environmental impact study. And that comes from the provincial policy statement, whereas there is a reference to a natural heritage system in the PPS. So that's where the linkage policy comes in.
And 374, it's our page 174, just one sec, I'll get it for you.
So that the policy that I'm looking at in 3757, linkages and enhancement areas, it reads, identification and protection of linkages is encouraged through development applications as part of maintaining the connectivity of natural heritage features and areas within the natural heritage system and maintaining it and enhancing biodiversity through the county. So if, like, does that make sense? Like, okay.
There was something in 3.7.4 was in communities stewardship. There was something there about like septic system maintenance. So is that where somebody's going to be coming around every year and check your septic system?
I'm just looking for the policy. So that's 374 community stewardship. So this reads, to be environmental leaders and create a healthy ecosystem, the efforts and stewardship of the whole community are essential. Community stewardship initiatives include educational programs, water management, septic system maintenance, sustainable agricultural practices, and good forestry practices. Perth County and local municipalities will work with the conservation authorities and community organizations to promote a healthy environment. The Perth Natural Heritage System Studies will inform the creation and implementation of stewardship and incentive programs, education programs, and the management of publicly owned forests and natural areas in Perth County. So what this suggests is that septic system maintenance is within a suite of programs that could, there could be educational or some sort of stewardship initiative that would help people understand what good septic system maintenance would look like.
But there'd be nobody coming around to check your system. Like that wouldn't.
That seems, I just don't think that there is that capacity, and like that's not what this is. This isn't directing that there be regular septic system.
Yeah. Well, I know in other municipalities that has come up where they were going to have somebody come around every year and check your system. So.
And that would be a direction by county council. Like there would be further discussion with regards to any septic system maintenance program.
And through you, Mayor, I guess that is also coming from the building code. If it's a maintenance program under Section 8 of the building code, in sensitive areas, that there would be a maintenance schedule in a municipality.
No, I was just interested in ordinary ones, not anything in a sensitive area or anything like that. Just everybody that's on our farms here, just our septic system. Because I know other municipalities were floating the idea that they were going to charge you so much a year to come around and check your septic system. So I just wanted to know where this is headed. Then when you talk about like recreational and those type institutional land uses and stuff like that, it's I think under 3742. That's okay, but I think at one place they'll be subject to a site plan. And also I've had many people phone me who have education or recreational areas, and all of a sudden now they're going to be natural areas, like natural heritage areas. So how are you going to square the circle? Because if they want to do anything, all of a sudden they're going to have to get an environmental study. So why put in about that you're going to have recreational areas if you're just going to make them natural heritage areas?
I mean, that's that we would like invite those people to come to the open houses so we can talk to them about their properties.
The one people, they phoned you a year ago and you've never got back to them. So, and water courses 3754, water courses and fish. An open water course, is a municipal drain going to be considered an open water course? It's on about page 1. Yep, 178. So that will be 77 on yours.
My understanding is that they are.
Okay, so any municipal drain is going to be considered fish habitat.
Through the Fisheries Act.
But then I believe the Drainage Act supersedes all that.
Yep. And then that's where conservation comes in.
Yep.
But we've had those conversations before about fish in drains, like it's always been that way. That's not changing.
Once upon a time it wasn't. And then when the federal government changed, then Fisheries and Oceans got in charge of municipal.
Right, but it's not changing in this official plan, that's the way it's been.
But it's still, if you've got a water course, it's any little bit of water going through it. So in my place, I have a municipal drain. And before my neighbor died, I asked him, has there ever been fish there? And if there had been fish there, he didn't know it. And there's never been fish there since my grandfather dug it out. So now I'm stuck with having to look to see if there's bloody fish in it if I want to do anything like clean out that municipal drain. So just, that's all.
Okay, other questions? Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. Looks like a lot of work. It must be hard. I'm just reading the preamble and it talks about all these competing interests, environment, building, two totally different things, right? Concrete and wood and using up trees for houses or saving thickets and bobolinks, right? It must be pretty rough. I couldn't imagine trying to rationalize all that. So yeah, again, it's kind of a competing interest. Was there any other documents used, plan to read other than those three there, kind of the studies? Was there anything federal or outside of that jurisdiction used in the planning process for the official plan or any official plan?
Well, there were other conversations, like the aggregate mapping that I showed you. It comes from the ARIP study, the Aggregate Resources Inventory papers that were prepared for the County of Perth. That was prepared by the Ministry of Natural Resources in 2013. Source water protection policies were reviewed by the source water protection staff. There are other legislative tools, which, some have been referred to tonight.
So the purpose tonight basically is kind of showing us around.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not making a decision here on whether we support or this is in our comment period or anything like that.
That's right. Yeah. That's a good question. Like the staff report that accompanies the document the recommendation is that Perth County received the report Perth East received the report for information purposes. The decision maker for the official plan is County Council. So if Perth East would like to provide comments to County Council, you can formally submit comments, and they would be received by County Council at the public meeting. So that's an option, and you can discuss that later. You don't need to discuss that tonight.
Just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Yeah, and you can, we have had many meetings with the steering committee and with your CAO independently, so there can also be informal discussions if there's something that you're wondering about. Let your CAO know, and he can follow up with the planning department.
So the public comment period starts is it the meetings? Is it a sheet at the meetings, or is there an email? How is feedback going to be solicited from everybody on this?
There are 4 public open houses, and then there is an email address, newofficialplan@perthcounty.ca. So if people aren't able to attend the open house, they can send emails and we've been receiving many emails. So the public comment period essentially, began at County Council's direction on December 21st, and will continue until the public meeting in May at County Council.
Okay.
So it doesn't end. It's simply that, I shouldn't use the word simply, there are 4 open houses to explicitly provide time for people to come and look at the mapping and talk, have conversations. There'll be a presentation at each one of the open houses at 5:30. So that will be, something similar to what I've just done.
Just asking questions, that's perfect.
Yeah, there will, Stephanie I'm not sure if council's aware, this is actually my last job here at the County of Perth. I'm moving to the region of Waterloo tomorrow. When he did the natural environment consultation. So she started on Monday of this week, and she will be at all of the open houses along with the development planners.
Okay.
So she'll be the person who's responding to the question.
Perfect, thank you for that. A couple more, if I may, sorry, nothing too major. So, and this may seem like a weird question, but I ran across in my reading that there's a consolidated OP online, and its preamble describes it as not the complete document. So the document that everybody's going to be the public is going to be looking at, that's going to be a complete OP document, draft OP document. Is that?
Are you referring to the current official plan, maybe?
Yeah, I read somewhere.
The department has been working on consolidating all the amendments, and that the consolidations weren't completely done. So that might be the note that you're seeing. But in the new official plan website, the document is complete.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah,
thank you.
and you received that in your package as well.
Okay.
So that is the complete draft of the document, and the associated mapping is all on the new official plan.
So all the wording and everything is all the actual, perfect, thanks. So it was mentioned before, really quick, about public stakeholder groups. Now, I was looking at and speaking with people with that in the beginning when it started. So we had the developers, the businessmen, the various groups, and there was a concern that there wasn't a good ratepayer. I guess that's the best word I can use, representation. Was that ever beefed up? Like, did you get a good response from ratepayers as part of the stakeholder groups, or like was there a committee on that during that? I know the developers and the business people would have been all over it, but was there a good representation from ratepayers? In your opinion, I guess you don't need.
Well, I would guess all of the members of the stakeholder, like I started working on the official plan in May of 2023. And that point, like the WSP was initially engaged in 2018. So there were many people, like the document has been worked on by, there has been transition in the planning department. So I believe the stakeholder focus group was initiated in 2018. I'm not positive on that. And then I believe in 2022, maybe 2021, 22, there were posters put up around the county inviting people to put in their names to join the stakeholder focus group. Mm-hmm. So I would say that all of the people that are on the committee, they all live in Perth County. They're all ratepayers. And we can provide the list to the clerk, so you can.
Maybe that was the wrong term. Maybe I meant residents.
Yeah, they're all residents of the county. Like 100% of the people on the stakeholder focus group.
Non-developer, non-business people, I guess, would be the way.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, they are.
Where's the last question here? So the comment period. Other than that, so and typically, I don't know if you've ever been through do you expect any, like the feedback that would come with the comments, do you expect to be any major changes if there's an overwhelming response saying this or that, or an overwhelming concern? Do you think that will be anticipate any big changes to this document, or typically it's...
I mean, it's a great question. I don't think, I would need a crystal ball. We're about to launch into the public consultation. Like so far, like this is the 4th presentation I've made to the Perth County municipalities, and the conversations have been similar to this, like really thoughtful questions, people imagining the vision that they have of the county and their communities, and imagining how, if the policies are going to help us realize those future places. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions, Bob?
Just to circle back, Susanna, you mentioned, I believe existing agricultural businesses would be allowed to add a residential unit. I think in the past, normally we always required the house first and then the business could be established later. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, this is, in the current official plan, agricultural, like there was Bachland Farms, for example, was a farm business in Perth East, and they submitted an official plan amendment in order to allow a residence to be accessory to that building, which was subsequently supported. I think there has been at least one more in Perth East in the last couple of years. So because there have been a couple of official plan amendments to permit residences to be accessory to ag-related businesses, and they were approved, that policy has been included to permit accessory residences to a farm business. So that's an ag-related business. Like Bachland Farms, for example, was an implement dealer, is an implement dealer, and they have an existing house, and it was permitted. So your question is it usually the other way around? I think the example of it could be the other way around if there was a farmhouse and then they in the current official plan, it's referred to as a secondary farm occupation, but in the new official plan, it would be an on-farm diversified use. That is a little bit different, like that's accessory to an agricultural operation or first there's a farm, then there's a business, and there's a house related to the farm, and then they also have a business. So there can be, like the policies allow a variety, like it intends to like, here is a framework there around the intention of protecting agricultural land for agricultural uses. And there's also an acknowledgement that, there's room for flexibilities in order to allow farm families to have secondary income sources. Does that get there?
Okay, any more questions? If not, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Draft New Perth County Official Plan dated February 6, 2024, prepared by the planner for information. Moved by Jeremy, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Susanna, and we wish you well in your next endeavors. So thank you for all your service. We've been at it 2 hours. We're going to take a 5-10 minute break and then we'll come back to it.
We have to extend curfew.
Okay, we're back, and moving on now, we have no reports from the CAO. We're moving to the clerk, and the first item is request for repair and improvement, section 78 of the Priesthood Municipal Drain. So Eric, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So we had a section 78 petition filed with our office by property owners Carrie and Christine Hahn for the Priesthood Municipal Drain. They're just looking to upsize the drain as it is relatively old. So they think it just needs to be brought to current standards. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, any questions of the report? If not, we have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the request for repair and improvement, section 78 of the Drainage Act by property owners Carrie and Christine Hahn for the Priesthood Municipal Drain, lots 21, concession 4, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, for information, and further that in accordance with section 78, 2 in brackets of the Drainage Act, the appointment of an engineer will be considered at the March 19, 2024 regular meeting of council subsequent to the notice advising of the proposed drainage works being sent to the Secretary Treasurer of the Conservation Authority that has jurisdiction over the lands in the affected area. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Amanda, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carried. And the next report is petition for drainage work. Eric?
Yes, thank you. We received a section 4 petition for a new tile drain in, I believe it's Southeast Hope. I've highlighted on the map there all 3 properties that have kind of been signed for. At this point in time, it's believed to be a proposed branch of the Wilker drain, but once the engineer is appointed, it could change to being to the Shearer drain or whatever the engineer decides is best. So we are looking to appoint Dietrich Engineering Limited under section 4 for this petition. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No, then we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the petition for drainage works, section 4 of the Drainage Act by property owner Gerhard Negrasses for parts of lots 26, 27, and 28, concession to Southeast Hope Ward, Township of Perth East for information, and at Council of the Township of Perth East appoint Dietrich Engineering to prepare a report under section 4 of the Drainage Act, and that staff proceed to provide notice of the proposed drainage works to the Secretary Treasurer of the Conservation Authority that has jurisdiction over the lands in the affected area. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Hugh, second by Amanda. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and the next one, another petition for drainage work for the Rostock drain. Eric?
Thank you. Yeah, we received another section 4 petition for an enclosed system tile drain in the Ellis Ward, and the proposal is to have the drain sort of run along the road and then up and outlet into the Rostock municipal drain. So we're looking to appoint Dietrich Engineering Limited under section 4, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the report? No, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the petition for drainage works, section 4 of the Drainage Act by property owned by Werner Egger of part lot 19, concession 10, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East for information, and that Council of the Township of Perth East appoint Dietrich Engineering Limited to prepare a report under section 4 of the Drainage Act, and that staff proceed to provide notice of the proposed drainage works to the Secretary Treasurer of the Conservation Authority that has jurisdiction over the lands in the affected area. Moved by Amanda, second by Jeremy. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we're going to move to finance, and we have the Ontario Regulatory Budget Matters 2024 expenses. Paula, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Eggets. Before council tonight is the annual report on the Ontario Regulation 28409, and that is regarding expenses that, non-cash expenses that you can exclude from your budgeting process, which most municipalities do. So there's 3 items that we're to report on if we have excluded them from the budget. One being amortization expense, and the estimated amortization expenses for 2024 that have been excluded from the budget total $2.8 million. This is based on the historical costs of the assets, and council is reminded that this will not replace the future asset replacement for those. On the flip side of that, we've included capital costs in the amount of 10.5 million, just under that. And then when we account for those adjustments, including the amortization expense, removing the capital expenses, that would increase the accumulated surplus for the township. The second item is the post-employment benefit expenses, and the township currently doesn't offer those post-employment benefits, so there's nothing to report there. And the third item is the solid waste landfill closure and post-closure expenses. And the township has reserves in the amount of $421,000, which are designated for the landfill site rehabilitation and post-closure expenses. So any future liabilities would be run through this reserve. If there's any further questions, I can be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the report? No questions. We have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Ontario Regulation 284/09-Budget Matters-2024 Expenses FIN-2024-03 prepared by the Treasurer dated February 6, 2024 for information. Moved by Jerry, second by Bob. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're moving to Public Works, and we have tender results for pickup trucks. Jake, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Eggetts. This report in front of council covers some tender results for a couple of pickup trucks. Your pretty standard pickup, one of which is for our water wastewater department and one for the roads. We actually garnered some decent interest in the tendering with 7 or 8 provided. John Bear Buick Chevrolet GMC was the low bid and actually fit our budget, so we would recommend going ahead with that. If there are any questions, I can try and answer.
Okay, questions of the report? Excuse me, seeing no questions, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Tender Results PW-2024-01 Supply of Pickup Trucks PUB-2024-02 dated February 6, 2024, prepared by the Manager of Public Works and Parks for information, and further that Council award the tender PW-2024-01 for the supply of 2 half-ton pickup trucks to John Bear Buick Chevrolet GMC Limited for the tendered price of $107,770 exclusive of HST. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have no reports from buildings. The next is Recreation and Community Services, Ontario Troium Foundation. Becky, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Ronda. Once again, we have an opportunity to apply for a grant for Troium capital grant, which is $10,000 to $200,000. We've been successful in the last 2 years, so whether we'll be fortunate again to get 3 years in a row, I'm not sure, but bringing forward this report to council for the consideration of 3 potential projects. One being the Shakespeare Downtown Park, which has been talked about before. It hasn't been identified in the strategy, the Parks Review strategy at all. Estimating a $300,000 project, and we would still have to come up with more funding should we be lucky enough to get 200 from Troium. The next recommendation would be the Newton Park playground. This has already been approved by council for this year's capital budget. And what it would do is reduce the amount of corporate asset reserves needed. And then the third is the Greenwood Park Washroom Pavilion, which we're already working with the Lions Club with, or they're working on fundraising for a washroom project. So this would add to that existing project. If there's any questions.
Okay, questions or comments, Hugh?
Becky, what were the other two projects that we were successful on again?
So we received the funding for the All Wheels Park, and then for fencing and bleachers at the Lau Yost Ballpark in Millbank.
Jerry?
So, thanks, Becky. The strategy, that's the one from 2021, the renewal one that we did?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, 3 good projects here with the Greenwood Park, with the development that we have down there at the east. That's happening and been happening. I think, yeah, it was September of 23 with the Lions Club kind of introduced this project. I think this is probably going to be one of their main projects of the year. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure. I see Lion Jeremy over there shaking his head. So I think this would be one of the projects that I would like to direct this application to, would be the Greenwood Park Washburn Pavilion, is my thought.
Okay.
Just to comment on that as well, I think the fact that the Lions Club is already engaged in this project bodes well to the application of the grant as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Who wants to make a motion? Jerry?
Sure. So it looks like there's a blank to fill in that receive for information, and we direct staff to apply to the Trillium Foundation for the Greenwood Park Washroom and Pavilion project.
Okay, so that Council of the Township of Perth East received a report entitled Ontario Trillium Fund Capital Grant, RCS 2024-03, dated February 6, 2024, prepared by the Manager of Recreation and Community Services for information, and that Council directs staff to apply to the Ontario Trillium Foundation Capital Grant for the Greenwood Park Washroom and Pavilion project. So we have moved by Jerry, second by Amanda. Any more comments or questions? Hugh?
How much can you ask for? Like, do they control how much, or you just, say you ask for like 100,000, like, is that the maximum you can ask for?
No, the maximum is $200,000.
Oh, okay.
So in the past applications, basically we put together a budget and figure out how much we, between the fundraising and that, what we actually need.
Oh.
So I wouldn't necessarily ask for the whole amount if I knew that funds were coming from somewhere else.
Oh, okay, just wondered what you think.
Okay, anyone else? If not, all in favor? Carried. Okay, we're moving to the fire department. So we have the fire department 2023 annual review. Bill, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we've got the 2023 annual report for the fire department. Admin Assistant Public Educator Jeff Suritzma put quite a bit of work into putting this together, and we certainly hope that you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Okay, any questions of the report? Seeing no questions, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Fire Department 2023 Annual Review FIR-2024-02, dated February 6, 2024, prepared by the Fire Chief for information. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Okay, over to correspondence. We have 2 items for correspondence. The first one is from Adam Harloff, and it's options to reduce the speed on Mill Street East in Milverton. So you want to refer this to staff and have them look at it and bring us back some information? Jerry?
Yeah, I know we've looked at it a few times over the years. I guess it doesn't hurt to go at it again. Again, we have some busy folks down there driving fast. And same with the next, I guess we are dealing with them separately, I take it, but the next one as well.
We can, or we can combine them too.
I would think we could combine the 2 together to have staff come back with something stop signs, speeds. Again, we've been through it. It was nice to see the OPP there last Friday. I creeped down there at the 41 kilometers an hour, and it was nice to see them park there. But yeah, I think another report. See if we can continue on and get something done.
Hugh?
And in the report, could we have a report on like how many tickets they've laid? Like how, if they're actually there more than, say, once every 6 months or something, like how many speeding tickets they actually give in that part of the world? Like just for information, please.
Okay, Jeremy?
Like my kids are walking in that area every day to school, and I work in New Hamburg every day, and I find myself sometimes driving to Baden from New Hamburg, and they have this school zone, they have the system, the ASE system, automated speed enforcement. I know you have to be sort of designated a community safety zone to have something like that, but that works. And I wonder if there's a way, Jake, you can throw that into your report somehow. Basically, it's a technology that catches you. It's right between the two schools in Baden, between New Hamburg or between Baden and Luxembourg there. And they have a camera that zaps your plate, sends you a bill in the mail if you're going over the speed limit at certain times. So there's automated speed enforcement. There's, there could be an option of crossing guard, and then they're requesting a stop sign. But I think there's a few different options for us here for sure. But I want to make sure we're not missing out on the ASE thing, because it's pretty new technology the province is allowing us to use in certain situations. So I'd like to check into that too.
Okay. Is it, staff, Jake, is it easier to have two motions, or is it all right to combine them? What would you prefer? You're the one that's gonna do the.
Yeah, I would suggest combining them. I think they're related enough where just one report to offer some potential solutions to council.
Okay, that's what Ashley said too, so.
Sorry, one further comment, like we were able to collect data on those vehicles coming in and out on Main Street. Can we do something here with that collection system too, so we know?
Yeah, so we've actually already captured some data. We're gonna capture more or collect more. But yeah, certainly that'll be part of the staff report.
Cool. And like times a day would be relevant too. If I guess that was maybe in the last report anyways, was the time of day in that. But.
So yeah, there is a breakdown by hour, by 15 minutes. So we'll definitely key in on some of the primary ins and outs for kids for the school there, and yeah, we can highlight that info. For sure.
Does it track the size of vehicles anyhow?
It does. There is kind of a class, if you will, that it puts a vehicle into. It doesn't give measurements per se, but it does, yeah, between small vehicles up to large trucks, we can identify with that radar device.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, so then the motion will be that the council of the Township of Perth East receive the correspondence from Amy Miller, Dan Leggett, and Jim Harloff, Milverton residents, petition to request stop signs to be added to the intersection of Mill Street East and Cobalt Street, Milverton, for information, and that council of the Township of Perth East receive the correspondence from Adam Harloff, Milverton resident, options to reduce speed on Mill Street East, Milverton, for information, and that council direct staff to prepare and follow up reports including OPP report on speeds, ASE system, and other reports relating to these areas. That cover it all? Okay, we need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Hugh, second by Jerry. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, next on the agenda is my meeting log. That's where I was for the month of January. Is there any questions where I was, what I did? And then we're going to council reports. We have Jerry's report, what he did at Roma. Thanks, Jerry. Any questions what Jerry did or saw? Anyone else that was at Roma want to make comments? No? Okay. Any other council reports? Nope. Okay, then we have a motion to accept the verbal or the mayor's meeting log and the verbal and the written report from Councillor Smith. And that's it. Moved by Jeremy, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're down to bylaws. Excuse me, we have no bylaws for first, second, third, or final reading. Are there any notice of motions? Other business? Announcements? Just remember, please remember about the, and Susanna touched on them, the official plan meetings that are coming up in all the different municipalities, and ours is going to be on the 15th of February here at the Perk. And it'll start at 4:30, the presentation will be at 5:30, and the open house is till 8:30. But everybody can go to any of them, there's 4 of them. You know, if you have comments, if there's something you want changed or whatever, go on the website, go to the open houses, and make yourself known. So we don't have a closed session of confirmatory bylaw. Okay, that bylaw 08-2024, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the Township of Perth East at its regular meeting held on February 6, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time. Moved by Hugh, second by Bob, all in favor? Carried, and the last motion of the night that we adjourn at 9:40. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone. Great night. Enjoy the rest of your night. Bye.